They say opposites attract.
Well, how about these opposites? Daddies and sons.
You're listening to Daddy and Son.
A podcast where we explore the dynamics of daddy and son relationships, multi-generational views.
And everything else in between.
Welcome back to another episode of Daddy and Son. My name is Alex.
And I'm Norm.
This week is shoot your shit episode.
What are you shooting?
Which just means that there is no production. There's no heavy production.
It means it was a lazy week for all of us guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
We get a week off this week.
But we always have something to say, right?
And we just talk about what's on our mind. You know, this week I actually was gonna go off. I was gonna rant about pride and corporations and stuff like that. Your phone okay? You gave it a little bit of a throw there.
Well, it landed on your carpet. But interesting you say you were going to talk about pride in corporations because, you know, when we get talking about it, that's what's happened to pride, isn't it?
It's become quite corporate.
Exactly.
And I just had a conversation with my therapist this morning, and my therapist was asked me if I'm excited, and I was like, actually, no, I'm not really excited about pride. I'm actually quite angry, and I kind of wanted to go off on a rant on it because...
Well, rant away. I want to hear you
because this is my platform, and, well, our platform.
Our platform, yeah. Well, I have a few things to say, too, so you go ahead and...
You know, and it's kind of odd, but before, we dive into this week's episode, how are you doing? How was your week?
It's been good, and it's not quite over because our normal Friday night session has been moved to Thursday.
I know, yeah.
But Pride really gets going in the next, 72 hours. And then a week from tonight...
Kind of true.
Yep. A week from tonight, Church Street will be all blocked off, and, we'll be into it. But no, it was a good week.
I know. I've been seeing so much discussion about hotels being already completely booked.
Oh, of course.
I have a friend who is visiting from Kingston,
Ontario.
Kingston, Ontario, and is basically saying that he can't find a hotel to book, so he's not gonna bother coming to Toronto because he can't. He has special needs. He's a quadriplegic, and he's like, I can't find a hotel, so I'm just not gonna bother to come.
Well, when they fill hotels with, maybe I shouldn't say this to our politically correct audience here, but a lot of our hotel rooms are being paid for by government money right now to house certain groups.
The unhoused.
Mm-hmm.
Why do people always say? I realize even at work people do that
the
as
unhoused,
well. They will say certain groups.
Certain unhoused groups.
Did I tell you that I was one of the panelists in a TED Talk recently?
Wow.
And I was asked to be a panelist because the person that they originally had for Queer Tech had another conference to do, so they opted out, and I was their next choice. And in the round table, there was this lesbian woman, white woman, and she was like, "Oh, I know that certain groups are left," and I was like, "Why do people always say?" Why are Caucasian people so uncomfortable? Why they're so uncomfortable by just calling it what it is?
Well, I don't know who the groups
say
are, but
the
it's not
silent
people
part out loud. Don't say certain
groups.
groups.
Homeless, it's refugees, it's
say
people.
it.
That's who it is, I guess. But, I mean, the hotel right down the street, right beside you here, used to be a hotel. It's now occupied by...
Which hotel?
No, the one next door to you here.
Novotel?
Yeah.
Novotel was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they closed it as it was a shelter.
Okay, there you go.
As a part of the COVID emergency response program.
And it's back to being a hotel?
And it got shut down.
Okay, well.
Which honestly, I did not vote against. I must be honest. I did not vote against it, but they did have a vote and a huge town hall about it last summer. And around November, while I was gone, they had shut down the hotel.
Which is partly why people
And
can't find a place to stay. There's a shortage.
Gave it back. Sorry, they shut down
The shelter?
The shelter.
Oh, I see.
Right.
Oh, okay.
They shut down the shelter.
Okay.
Sold it back to a private company, and it's now a hotel, like a hotel again.
But the point is, Pride brings in hundreds and thousands of people every year. So unless you book ahead or you're staying with somebody, you may be SOL if you try to book late. And unfortunately for your friend, although there's the Oshawa Holiday Inn might work. I think they have special Pride rates out there, although they'll have to take a 45-minute
Allegedly, apparently in North America combined, Mexico, US, and Canada, the Pride or the economy of Pride brings in close to $2.9 trillion.
Holy Toledo! I heard that.
Not B, trillion with a T.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
that's huge. And Toronto has a huge parade and an event. It's a big
so
deal.
I don't want to hear nothing more about gay people being poor. I'm just playing.
Well, we certainly attract the ones with money. Let's put it that way. By the way, you haven't asked what we're drinking, and you're going to have to
because
tell me.
That's your question.
Well, what are we drinking? Because it is delicious. It's definitely it's. I would call it a nouveau martini.
This is a form of martini. Yes, this is the kind of martini that James Bond drinks. It's called a Vespa. It's equal part vermouth, vodka, gin, Lillet Blanc. And
four things. Okay.
4 things.
Oh, okay.
It is stirred.
It's called a hybrid drink.
Not shaken, even though people say you're supposed to shake it, but I prefer to stir it.
I noticed that, yes.
I find the flavor is a lot different, and I've experimented with this actually. When you shake it versus when you stir it, I have experimented with this, and I found that when you stir it, it actually tastes a lot better. The flavors of the Lillet Blanc and the gin marry a lot better than when you stir it. It just tastes very almost watery. Ladies
and gentlemen, I must say the bartending services here are excellent, are superb.
Thank you.
Especially when it comes to
the girls when I went on my Bombay Sapphire tour, they said, sometimes if you mix it, it bruises the gin. So I think that's the appropriate term. It bruises the gin.
When you mix it?
When you shake it, it bruises.
Well, we don't want to bruise the gin.
No, we don't want to bruise the gin.
Well, let's move on then. What you talked earlier before we went on about you being a little bit upset or angry about Pride.
Well, yeah, I honestly feel like right now we are at a moment where everything has gotten to the point of being heavily capitalistic. And the community at large, and when I say the community at large, I'm talking about the Alphabet Mafia community.
Explain. Alphabet Mafia community?
The Ligga Bigga Tiggers.
Oh, the LBGT.
Yeah, the whole salad.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Fine. Which includes certain groups, you might add.
Yes. Oh my God.
Right, okay. Carry on. Some of the certain groups, unidentified here. But carry on. Sorry, I interrupted you really here.
And basically, I do feel as though the Black and brown community is left out.
Really?
Yes, I do feel the Black and brown community is left out. I do feel the indigenous community is left out. I do feel like the Palestinian community is left out. And I do understand that in a time right now where things are heavily polarized, in a time where geopolitically things are a little bit strained. So folks are either on a spectrum of, yay, I want to party, or feeling a little bit more like how I feel just
Why-
very angry.
But how do you feel they're left out? I want you to explain that, because I don't have any sense
I
of pride
feel
right
like
now.
we're left out the conversation. I feel like in a world where people are saying, "Oh yeah, there is no more need for safe spaces. There is no more need for a Church Street." For those who may are listening and not from here, Church Street is our gay village and one of the largest gay villages next to West Hollywood, next to West Hollywood in North America. But it's been taken over by condominiums and
Oh yeah, no, there's nothing left at Church Street. Let's face it. It's characterless
and
yeah.
like folks aren't necessarily.
It looks like Cleveland run down. Sorry, folks that live in Cleveland or Detroit. But no, there's a lot of construction about to happen, and these places are.
And it's not for the it's
People.
not for the LGBTQ community.
It doesn't seem to
the
be.
community is being
pushed out.
And the excuse is, which I hear from a lot of the Alphabet Mafia community members, specifically the white ones, is that there's no need for it because they can just go anywhere and be themselves. Wrong.
Well, I disagree. I wish there
That
were.
is not true.
I miss the Church Street that was there 10, 15, 20 years ago. I mean, I'm a white person. I miss it because that was a community. That was a place to gather. And now it's kind of, I don't know. I don't feel for me, I walk past it many times during the week. It doesn't have the pizzazz it used to have.
No.
You agree?
No, I do agree. And I do feel like even before then, as a person of color, right? Not when I'm living in a world where I'm dealing with issues, actively dealing with issues such as pay inequality or even discrimination in my own community, whether it's the Black community, I'm being discriminated against because, or the Afro-Latino community for being queer or being gay, or in the gay community, I'm being discriminated against by this marginalized community for being Black.
Really?
Yes.
How are you experiencing that, Alex? I'm curious because I want to know.
The ugly face of racism shows up in so many ways. Whether it is from the aspect of people being fetishizing me,
okay,
or by saying, commonly. And this happened like just a few weeks ago, as you know, because you saw me reboot my Daddy Hunt profile, where I've like kind of updated my profile to promote the show.
Yeah.
And someone reached out to me and he's like, "Ooh, I love sexy chocolate." And I'm just like, what?
Well, look.
Or I've dated white people in this town who've said to me, "Okay, I can be with you, but I can't introduce you to my friends or family because they won't understand me dating a Black person."
Pure racism. That is pure racism.
And that is my point. So, yes, equality and understanding and tolerance exists. Phoenix, you're chewing very loudly, my dear, and we're recording.
Yes. That's Alex's dog, just for those of you who may be listening or wondering who Phoenix is.
Go to bed. So, yeah, and
it's funny, just to interrupt you, I'm totally oblivious to this. Like, I guess because I'm a white person who's been through a whole lot of gay prides.
But that is the point, Norman.
So you're raising my awareness of how you feel.
Awareness only, right, because there's two parts to pride.
Yeah.
Not pride, the party, but pride, the protest. There's two parts. There is acceptance, right? There's the fight for equality. And then there is...
Don't we have that now?
And then there's awareness.
Okay. Don't we have equality now? I mean, from a legal point of view...
From a legal point...
We have equality.
We have it.
Yeah. Okay.
So there is now the awareness part, right? And the awareness part is where we bring awareness so that there is a sense of normality. So there's when people are like, how do I explain You know,
I think it's acceptance. I think there's awareness. I think the problem is your friend that won't introduce you to other people, he knows they won't accept you. And that's the problem. That's where the barrier is that I'm not even aware of, but you've raised it here. And then, that's unfortunate because you are a great guy. There's a lot of great people of color out there. There's a lot of great other people. People are good. We're all God's creatures. We all have something to offer the world. Why don't we love everybody? That's the way I look at life. But, pride to me is kind of, as I said to you in an email this week, I'm kind of like, oh yeah, pride is coming up. I mean, for me, pride is, the fun of Church Street on a Friday night when everybody walks up and down and says hello. And I see people I haven't seen for 2 and 3 and 4 years. That to me is the pride. I enjoy that. I'll tell you what angered me a few years ago, and this was, I think it was it the Black Lives Matter movement that basically excluded the cops from the whole project. That to me was wrong because I think the police are an important part of our community. They protect us. Not everybody thinks that, but I do because I've seen it happen. So I think, my view is we should be open to all people.
And I actually have the opposite view. And not because I'm a black person, but I have the opposite view where, and again, this goes back to the reason you're oblivious to these things is because nobody's talking about it. What Black Lives Matter did was shed a light on a situation where black people of the community, of the LGBTQ community, are aggressively being carded by cops, are aggressively being treated by cops, are unequally be challenged by police officers and treated poorly by police officers.
And that's wrong.
But because that's not your experience as a white queer person.
Yeah, and it's wrong. What you're describing is wrong.
You feel protected. But as a black queer person, I may not feel protected. And pride is for all of us.
Well,
and so
protection from police is for all of us.
And as it should be.
Yeah.
And so the argument was police officers can participate in pride, but we don't want them participating there in uniform. And that is a very fair ask.
Well, I don't
Think
agree.
about it.
I don't agree.
If you...
Because I don't agree because a lot of other people think they should be there.
And a lot of people... And again, everyone is entitled to that opinion. But what I like, and this is why I'm saying, whether it is right or wrong, in this conversation is immaterial. The point is that white people, white gay people are oblivious to the racism within the community itself. And because they are, what Black Lives Matter has done by presenting that ask as a form of protest, this radical ask of not having the police in uniform being a part of the protest has brought awareness to an issue that otherwise you would have been still oblivious.
Well, I guess, that is one component of the whole gay pride event. The other part is, listen, do we have something yet we need that we don't have?
Many things.
Okay, let's talk about that. I mean, I'll tell you one thing I don't have. I still don't feel totally comfortable coming out to all my business colleagues that I've known over 20, 30 years. So to me, that's an aspect of, and that's because, when I first started to come out 40 years ago, it wasn't, there was a gay pride parade. It was much smaller than it is today. I remember sitting on top of an apartment on Yonge Street in 1985, watching this little parade go by, and 45 minutes later, we went out drinking. Today, it's 2 hours and 45 minutes later, right? I mean, God damn it, these people take forever to go down Yonge Street. What the hell?
I think the population has just gotten larger.
Well, and it brings a million people into the city. Well, it is you got to admit, there's a lot of fun at Gay Pride here.
No,
we have a lot of fun.
And that's the part of it, going back to the original statement. I'm just not. In previous years, I was about going to the parties. I was about having fun. This year, particularly, I don't know if this is what 30s look like.
Oh, your 30s, getting into your 30s, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
Being more aware politically,
Being more aware,
socially.
like, but I am just.
Well,
I don't feel included, and I'm over it.
does it matter?
It's-
What if you
it
went away
does.
for the weekend? Would
Because
it matter?
It matters because I live here.
Okay.
I pay taxes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
And you're a
I'm
mile from the church street.
I'm a
let's face
member of the community.
Yeah.
I should be involved
it. To what extent?
to the extent of everyone else.
Well,
I should get the same treatment. Since you brought up police officers as an example, which was only one of the 7 demands. See, a lot of people keep forgetting the other 6. Like the fair distribution of equity for programs in the Black queer community and X, Y, and Z. A lot of people keep forgetting about all those important asks. But the police one specifically, since you brought that one up, that is a perfect example. I pay police officers' salary no more or different than you do.
yeah.
I should be treated the same way as a white person does.
I don't have a problem with that. What I had a problem with was with that particular event was that this group interrupted the whole parade,
For 20 minutes.
for everybody's enjoyment. Well, it was more than that.
It was 20 minutes.
Well, it looked like a hostage. I just thought that was those tactics were a little
Aggressive?
Yeah.
That's what a protest is.
Well, it didn't go well over. It didn't go over with me very well. But anyway,
It didn't go over very well with a lot of people, and that is again part of why I feel resentful. Because you think as a marginalized, granted, again, at a micro level, I can't even go on an app without somebody flirting with me incorrectly, comparing me to food.
well,
Right? At a macro level.
maybe you shouldn't go on the app.
Even at that level of expectation, I wasn't really expecting much. So somebody coming to the streets, a group of people hitting the streets with some hard hitting issues to say, hey, I'm a member of this community. I pay taxes like everyone else. I'm involved. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. I am Canadian. I deserve to be treated with respect. And then everybody's like, no. This is Pride. This is a place to party and have Molly and blow your whistles and walk around in your jockstrap. This is not a place to protest.
Love
it's
your
like,
neighbor.
what are we doing? Because
Love your neighbor.
lest
as
we
yourself.
forget Stonewall.
Nice little bar in New York, by the way. Greenwich Village.
Lest we forget which actively kicked off the first Pride.
Yes, it did.
And which was led by who? Black trans people.
And that word wasn't even in the common lexicon then, was it?
No, it wasn't.
No. Trans? What's trans? Is that part of an airline
And here
name?
we are now in the year of our Lord 2024.
I think it's common era now, but anyway.
And black people, especially trans people, are still left out the conversation. They're still getting.
Well, listen.
They're still at the bottom
Okay.
of the totem pole.
Hold on.
Of course, I'm not feeling festive. I'm feeling angry as hell.
Hold on. I'm not part of the conversation either. I have no idea what's going on with Pride.
But that's
I haven't
because
sought to be.
nobody's talking about it.
Well, no one's asked me. No one's. I don't really.
But let me challenge you, Norm.
No, let me just say this.
Have you sought out this information yourself?
No, because I don't think of it as a big deal. It's just, okay, you're gay. Big deal. I'm not a big person to celebrate things. Hey, the Raptors won? Wonderful. I'll go out and sit on my balcony and clap for a few minutes and go back inside. Gay Pride? Hey, hello everybody. It's great to walk up and down Church Street for 20 minutes on the Friday night. Thank you. I'll wait till Monday morning to go back. Thank you. I mean, for me, it's just not a big deal.
Yeah.
You know, I've been there, done that, and I finally come out. I'm gay. So what? but I know that not everybody thinks that way. Okay, so I'm aware of that. But what do you want different? Let me ask you, what would make you happier about, what would make, what
see,
do we
this
need
is
to
why
change?
this-
Should we talk about that in the next segment?
This is
Because
why
I need a
this is
refill.
this is why before we go on a break, this is why this is called Daddy and Son. Because you mentioned something earlier, which is
Generational differences coming up here, folks.
the fact that you still haven't come out to some of your business associates.
No.
Versus I've been out to everyone in my life. Literally, my professors in university knew I was gay.
But you knew you were gay too. I didn't know
Yeah.
I was gay till I was like 25 or 30.
I never
wouldn't-
had the experience of coming out the closet. I've always
Well,
been gay.
I did. I mean, the damn thing was creaking for 5 years. I need another drink, honey. Let's do it.
So before, for me specifically, it was as it's I can't relate to your experience of
Yeah.
I can't come out to people.
Yeah.
I have already been out. So what
fantastic.
I am feeling
Is that pushback?
is the pushback.
Yeah, okay.
And that is what I am fighting
And,
for.
and you know what? I support
The
that.
quiet
You know
part
what?
said out loud.
And probably I'm fearful that I would get the same thing, and that's why I don't come out. So we're at the same place.
More to come when we get back from this refill, from Norma's refill.
Bring it up and remind myself what's in there.
Well, now we're back.
We are back, folks. Norm and Alex.
And
1 week before Gay Pride here in Toronto.
I think I want to take a moment and segue a little bit because you sent me an article today about it's a National Post article about what's Canada, and the title of the article is "What's Canada's Silent Majority Actually Believes."
That's a major newspaper here in Canada for those of you who are listening.
Yeah. I actually particularly don't necessarily like the National Post. I think that they're
Right of center, would you say?
I think they're center right.
Yeah.
I think they're very heavily opinionated. I don't believe that actual like good journalism should be as subjective as the National Post tends to be.
Well, then we would probably recommend you not watch Fox News either. But that's another issue. So let's talk about the article.
Let's jump into it. So according to this article, they
What was the title of the article?
so the title of the article, like I said, is what Canada's silent majority actually believes.
Right.
And silent majority is in quotations. And they don't define silent majority, but basically what they're saying is the silent majority is the people that they contact on their polls, which is again
Well, probably
another
a lot of
situation.
A lot of people on that. So I would suggest, first of all, this is probably based on some pretty accurate polling.
They said 50,000 people.
Yeah. So this has got some, let's use the business word, empirical. There's some
Empirical evidence?
Yeah, there's
I
some-
wasn't included in this poll. I never got called. And
Well,
Toronto
you don't need to be. It's representative.
Toronto alone has 5 million people.
That's
So
fine.
50,000 is
That is a good sample if it's done the right way. Point being, it's not just Toronto. This is national. Okay, so this is about the country.
that's like 1%.
Toronto, just for those of you who are listening, Toronto happens to be, by and large, a fairly liberal, left of center thinking community, but that's not necessarily characteristic of the entire country. So this
absolutely.
This article is talking about the whole country.
I was
Yeah.
just giving context in
Right.
terms of sample size.
Okay, fair
For
enough.
this poll,
Yeah.
which is why we know you guys can't see me, but I have air quotes throwing up right now. When I say
Skepticism. I hear it.
silent majority, it's like ooh.
All right, let's get to the points. So, carry on.
According to them, Canadians, they want more criminals in jail for longer periods of time. And they also want to bring back death penalty.
Well, that's a weird one. I was surprised at that one, but I wasn't surprised at the concern about criminals.
Harder punishment for criminals.
Yeah, and the ease with which people who are charged with crimes get back out on the street before they've gone to court sometimes.
Well, here's the thing.
And that's legitimate.
It's legitimate.
Yeah.
The concern is legitimate from an uneducated perspective.
Well, I'm educated and I have that concern.
Yeah, but not because you're educated doesn't mean you're informed on this particular subject.
I'm very informed, and those have been examples of people that have gone out and committed crimes that they should have been in jail for. That's where this is coming from.
So you're heavily informed. So you would say that you're heavily informed on
I have an opinion.
criminal justice reform.
I have an opinion based on things that I've read and seen happen that had the laws been different would not have happened and people wouldn't have been hurt.
However,
how's that sound? That's a hard one to counter, I know.
Well,
Let's
I don't
move on
know.
to
Ask
number
the
two.
audience. Well, how does that sound?
Well, okay, thank you. You can tell us later in the emails. What's number 2 on the list?
You know, I look at countries like Sweden and Norway that they have a more relaxed criminal justice reform process than we do, and their reoffense rate is a lot lower. Their homicide rate, granted, ours is not as high. What we do in a year is what Chicago does in a weekend, but that's besides the point.
They don't have cities of 5 million people either, or 2 million people.
Well, that's true.
They might have 2 million. All right, I don't think that's a good compare. Well, let's keep going on this list here because this is.
They said that Canadians don't want to pay more for the carbon tax.
That is.
Even though
Thank you,
they
full
do
stop.
have care. They care about the environment. They do, but they don't want to care. They don't want to pay more for the carbon tax. If found, 57% are in favor of execution of a higher tax for Phoenix.
They're in favor of what?
Executing higher, removing higher taxes.
Yeah.
For
Carbon.
For yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, guess what? Just this past week, and forgive me for citing what happened in Europe, there was a European election, and a lot of the Greens and the softies and the let's tax carbon got kicked out.
There were 2 elections.
Well.
Are you talking about the EU election? Or are you talking about
EU,
France?
The EU election.
Okay.
And of course there were French people. But what's becoming evident in polls and then also in election polls is people are prepared. Yeah, we don't like climate change, but I don't know if I want to pay for it. And that's what that is saying. It's just saying I'm taxed enough. I don't want to spend another $30 on whatever it is.
Well, here's the thing.
And so what?
It says nearly 2/3 endorse the sentiment that cost of living concerns should come first, even if it damages policies to widespread hate. For the carbon tax was also found in a September leisure poll commissioned by Post Media that found 55% want to kill the carbon tax bill.
Who wants to pay more tax, right?
Here's where I say this.
Okay.
Cost of living is very much important. And 2 things can exist at the same time. And maybe this is just me as a millennial, maybe this is me having wishful thinking, but what is the point in having more money to spend if there's not a world to spend it in 2 or 3 generations, which is where we are heading. Science has proven that. You see, the thing is, a lot of older people, which I believe are. This is not an attack.
I feel darts coming this way.
This is not an attack.
Oh, I wish you would.
But let me keep it all the way 100 and hear me out. A lot of these polls are done over phone. Okay. Who are available to answer these phone calls if not the boomers and the retirees and the elderly? Who is not going to be around 2 or 3 generations from now?
We're not all at Zumba classes on Friday night.
The boomers, the retirees, the elderly. And What do they care about? Be able to have spending power to enjoy their retirement.
They want to outlive their finances.
That is true, and that is fair. That is fair.
So don't take it away from me now for something I can't see happening in a whole long time.
But it's not all about you.
And besides the point,
Being a responsible citizen.
The worst offenders aren't paying.
Being a responsible citizen
Bullshit.
is being...
The worst offenders aren't paying. Why should I? That's their argument.
A responsible citizen is leaving the earth. Your legacy should be leaving the earth
with a bank account.
And that includes socially and economically in a better position than how you came into it.
Well, as long as I have some money in my bank account, I left it in a better position. Thank you. What's the next one on that list?
Moving on. Blanket support for LGBT rights come to a screeching halt when children are involved. So basically, they're saying that in the past 40 years, gay marriage and gay rights have been, between India and Canada, we've been like the cornerstone of LGBT rights, Q rights, and trans rights across the world. Especially in North America, same-sex couples were allowed to marry legally. Especially in Canada. First in North America, and it's has overwhelming majority support. Polls show that last month showed that 75% of Canadians in the Ipsos the Ipsos poll should where same-sex couples should be allowed to legally marry. That's what the girlies are saying. Yeah. Right? So they're pro-marriage. However, where the girlies draw the line is they draw the line at gender-affirming care, particularly for children. Okay. Canadians are, and I quote, the article says, Canadians are not too hot on gender transition surgeries for minors, which is also the law of the land across much of the country. In a February leisure poll, plurality, 45% backed a blanket ban on gender surgeries for minors such as double mastectomies or orchestromies. So basically what that is just getting their genders replaced. Yeah. This was against 30% who thought that the procedures were fine. And I have to admit...
Mm-hmm. Do you agree with that? You know what plurality is here. 45% is a majority, but it seems to be the biggest part of the pie there.
Of the pie.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit torn on this because I believe in gender affirming care to the point where if a child,
you are indeed on the fringe.
If a child says, "Hey, I identify I'm a born male, but I identify as a female," and
that's fine.
Their parent says, "Okay, as I'm gonna take you to the family doctor, and I'm gonna get you hormone blockers when you're of age, and I'm gonna get you hormone blockers, and I'm gonna get you therapy," which is all a part of the overall branching of gender affirming healthcare. When you're of age, meaning you're above the age of 21, not even 18, you're above the age of 21. While going through years of therapy and being able to experience life in the gender you were born with, if your feelings or opinions have changed, great. If they haven't, great.
Go ahead.
You can go ahead as an adult.
Yes, that's fine. And do you agree with that?
Because you're on blockers, you're on hormone suppressants, so you're still in a position where your body hasn't fully transitioned through puberty.
All right, but what about the kid that doesn't have access to all that stuff?
And that is where the issue comes in. I believe that everyone should be able,
I disagree with that.
everyone should be
Okay, fair
able
enough.
to have access
We-
to gender affirming care.
We have a disagreement that's based on.
But why not? Why do you do?
Because I really believe that the parent knows more than the kid does at that age, and that is part of life. And that is, by the way, that
No,
is-
I don't
that is-
agree with that.
Well, that's fine. We can disagree on it. That's where the people
You know
are
why?
at, and that
Because-
is not going to. And it's certainly under a conservative government, that's going to be the way things are.
Oh, no, I know for sure.
yeah.
But I don't necessarily agree with that because here's the thing.
That's fine, but most people think that, and they think it because, you know what, in 20 years you may regret that decision. And you wouldn't have regretted that decision if you'd waited a little longer to make it.
And that is why I believe that we should be supporting children by educating them and giving them tools
Well,
to make informed decisions for themselves, but not telling them, hey, this is what you should be doing or this is not what you should be doing. They should be, if I come to you and I am 8 years old and I say, Mommy, Daddy, I don't feel like I am a boy, then my parents shouldn't look at me and say, no, you are a boy, end of story. I believe my parents should be fostering my thought process and sending me to therapy to see,
I don't
it
buy
is
that.
fair to explore. Because here's what,
who would give you therapy?
ask any trans person today who has transitioned in their 40s, their 30s, their 50s, later on in life, what their family values are, or how they relate to their family today.
You should be
There
in
is so
politics.
much resentment.
That they didn't
there
get
is-
it earlier?
There is, no, it's not even about the transition. It's about the fact that they were not supported. That is the purpose of gender affirming care.
Okay, so you support it, but you delay the decision.
Exactly.
All right. Let's do the next issue. See, we agreed on that, folks.
It's
Aren't
not.
I easy? I'm easy to agree with. I'm an agreeable. You have all the emotion on this. I just say, wait a minute. There's a solution here. Let's find it. Okay, what's the next issue? Because that article covered a few things.
It did cover a few things. It also said further down the line that parents don't want the teachers to be saying, okay, because in Alberta, which is the only place it is right now,
That's right.
it's
That's
illegal.
the most right of center province.
Yeah, it's illegal for school teachers to identify students by whatever gender they identify as. So the law now states that teachers are not allowed
Oh,
to.
they're either male or female. Yeah. Okay.
Teachers are not allowed to identify students by whatever gender they choose without discussing it with the parents.
Okay.
The issue with that I find is that homophobia starts at home.
You are a radical. You know that? I'm going to say that. You're
So,
a radical.
I believe that school is one of those safe spaces. If you're poor, school is where you go to get lunches, free lunches. That's why I believe in lunch programs. School is where a lot of children go, it's their only meal for the day.
Isn't that horrible? Isn't that sad?
But it's the reality of things. School is where a lot of kids go to get guidance. The school counselors is where they feel support. Because maybe at home,
what happened at
they're
home?
being abused.
Oh, that's horrible.
I dated someone, the same person we were talking about earlier before we started recording, who was heavily abused at home.
Oh, it's horrible.
And not just by his own biological father,
Oh, God.
but by his stepfather as well. So he was getting it on both ends. Whether he was with his mom or if he was with his dad because they were divorced. So he was getting abused physically to the point where he's had.
Point being,
So I honestly believe that when it comes on to issues about sexuality or gender, I don't believe that right now as a society we're in a place where parents can make that informed decision. Not when we're
Well-
living in a society where we are at the 50% we are literally 52 position in the world for literacy. No.
I think that
while
you are passionate about this,
if a
the
child,
silent majority of families has a view.
oh
on
no,
this.
this is, I'm saying that this is the silent majority. This is what they agree on. But I also believe that the silent majority is misinformed.
They're missing part of the story.
They're missing a huge part of the story. Children need to feel safe, and if they feel safe at school, why are we stripping away children's safety and then turning around and saying, oh, it's because of the children? It's not about the children, it's about their egos. It's not about the children. But
I thought there were some economic issues on that. Certainly.
There are economic issues
you're hitting
there.
on all the sexual ones.
Let us see.
Any particular reason?
Kind of values, ethnic. Oh! They like ethnic diversity, but they're skeptical about multiculturalism.
So I guess the question is, what is multiculturalism? And I think if I read that article,
that wasn't defined.
It actually was that the individual multicultural, an individual culture has the right and ability and should continue to thrive and survive as a separate entity. And there's some people saying, wait a minute, you got to be part of Canada. And I got to be honest, I agree with that. What I like about the United States is when you go there, you are an American. You are a something American if you come from some other place. Here in Canada, we're not quite as. It's the difference between a melting pot and a mosaic. And this was described when I was taking political science 50 years ago. There was a book, I forget the name of it now, but this sociologist talked about how the United States is a melting pot where you all become part of American. And in Canada, we tend to keep our cultural identities.
Yeah.
And there's so many different cultural identities, we don't know what cultural identity Canadian is. That's kind of what they're saying there.
I think that's a uniquely Toronto problem. I don't think the girlies in Quebec have that problem.
Or Manitoba.
Or
well, they're all white in Manitoba anyway, right?
It's kind of changing lately.
Oh, really? You were out there recently.
It's changing lately. And I quote, according to this article, in a November poll by Ledger, a majority of respondents agree with the notion that while national identities are great, and this is the national identities of immigrants coming into Canada, they should come second to Canadian values.
Yes.
And I'm an immigrant to this country.
Yep, 10 years. We've known each other.
And I must say that...
And I welcomed you, didn't I?
I agree.
Yeah.
I have to agree.
I was open to that.
They say a clear majority of 55% of persons who are participating in this poll agree with the notion that newcomers should embrace, and I quote, embrace broad mainstream values and traditions and leave behind elements of their cultural identity that may a similar share of respondents were skeptical of claims that diversity is our strength. Listen,
can I say something?
Basically, that they're saying is that if you come here, you should be leaving behind certain parts, certain elements of your cultural identity and embracing that of a Canadian.
But you know what? That's hard to do.
It is hard to
because
do.
Canada doesn't really have that sort of unique identity that Americans do. Americans look, the flag, liberty, the Constitution.
That is not true.
The American way of life.
I don't agree.
We don't quite have it.
I don't agree. I think Canada has a very strong identity.
Well, tell me what it is.
And you know how I know Canada has a strong identity?
Tell me.
I made it a point of my duty when I first... Because I've traveled all across Canada.
Mm-hmm. And internationally.
I've done 2 whole road trips where I've driven.
I know, you're crazy, but that's fine.
From Toronto
to Vancouver.
All the way to Vancouver and back.
You're crazy.
And I stopped in every small town.
Okay, interesting.
And I said hi to what
was the reaction?
It was positive.
They loved you. Of course they did.
This is why I don't feel as negatively towards the Midwest as most Torontarians do. Black or white.
Maybe Toronto's
gay or straight.
Maybe Toronto's got a weird problem. What do you think? Maybe we've got a Toronto.
I think
Star
Toronto
problem.
is a bubble.
Ooh, you know what? That's another topic. Ooh,
That's for
a
another
good one.
podcast.
That's another podcast. Toronto is a bubble.
Toronto is a
Ooh.
bubble.
You know, we would need to hear from people from around the country who agree with that.
I went to
That's a
my
good-
first ever threesome.
Oh, you went to it? Was it a pre-appointment?
Your face just now, where
it
you
pre-appointed?
just gave me this
Whoa,
like.
really?
de-
Were you the one that coordinated it or somebody else?
My first ever threesome was with 2 cowboys in Alberta
Wow.
that I met at the Stampede.
Wow. Pound, pound, pound.
Stop. Oh my God, I can't.
I didn't know you were into cowboys.
Well, you know, I like to spare the horse and ride something else. With that being said, you know, no. With that being said, you know, going back on, bringing it back, I do agree that to a certain extent, people do need to leave behind certain identities and embrace the Canadian culture. And I disagree with your point that Canada doesn't have an identity. Canada absolutely doesn't have an identity. What the thing is, Canadian identity is not as toxic as American identity, which is why it's not as salacious.
Well, I don't think it's as obvious, but I will tell you. Let me tell you.
Because you're not going to look at
May I share something?
Canadians. 1 second, I'm going to let you share something. So hold that in your thoughts. Canadian identity. You're not going to tell me that the whole culture of being friendly and sharing and maple.
That's to my point.
And maple syrup and traditions of cottaging and having boat waffles with maple syrup and embracing people for who they are, no matter who they are, and loving them no matter what, including the LGBT, the Liga Biga Tigga community, and embracing nature and camping and all these various things. You're not going to tell me that these aren't aspects of Canadian culture and identity, because when I leave the bubble of Toronto, that's all I see.
Well, actually, a lot of Toronto would agree with it. That is part of Canadian culture, cottaging and stuff. Let me share what I was going to say. I remember this would have been
Our culture may not be guns and a flag.
No, and to my point,
and America.
Well, this is something that an American pointed out to me years ago. I was meeting a friend from California. He was flying in for a few days, and he was transferred. He was actually had to catch another flight. So I spoke to him at the airport. This is way before 9/11. You could go and talk to somebody inside the airport. And he said, you know, I can always tell the Canadians at an airport. I said, how's that? He said, they just seem so polite, so natural. They're not contentious. I could just tell when I was looking at people sitting there versus sitting there, that was the Americans, those were the Canadians. That is where the Canadian culture comes in. It's something that you can't really put a word on. Now, this was 30 years ago, too. So we have...
No, it still is the same.
Well, that's interesting. So that is what Canadian culture is. Anyway, and you've been across the country. I laud you for, you know, Alberta and all the adventures you've had there. But I agree, Alberta's definitely a more right of center province.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely it's more like Texas in Alberta.
It is more like Texas,
I like Alberta.
but it's nothing like Texas, and that's the thing.
Okay.
It is a lot like Texas, but nothing like Texas.
Well,
I think Alberta is Texas in drag.
Well, it's Alberta. It's Texas. First of all,
Sorry, Alberta is
it's quiet.
Is in Texas drag. And when I say it's in Texas drag, I mean the girls dress up like they're from Texas, but their mannerisms and their hospitality
they're much nicer. They're not the energy.
It's very Canadian.
And you don't
they
have
don't
guns.
have that energy and
no guns.
They care about their guns. Don't get me wrong.
Not as much as in not as much as in Texas.
But they're not like, oh, if we don't have our guns, we're gonna go into the streets and burn something.
We're not as aggressive.
They're not as aggressive.
That's the Canadian. The difference in Canada is we're just not as aggressive, not as open, not as not as open. That's another one. Oh boy, that's another subject. You know what? We've shot a lot today, haven't we?
We've literally shot like so many things.
Mm-hmm.
I think the last thing on this article was really about the anti-Israeli position. And much like what I said earlier, because gay people are everywhere, like the conversation is really, if you're criticizing Israel, you're not, if you're not pro-Israel, then you're anti-woman. You're not for women's rights. You're not for gay rights, because Israel is the only country in the Middle East that really mirrors the rights of most North American or Western countries. And be that as it may, if that is the case, they should be able to undergo scrutiny and criticism like any other Western nation.
I do know a
lot of the same people.
Go ahead. A lot of the same people
who are saying that they are, if you criticize Israel policies or their stance on the war, then you're anti-Semitic, are the same people who criticize Trudeau. Well, criticizing Trudeau doesn't make you any less anti-Canadian.
Yeah, I agree.
Criticizing
Israel
Benjamin's
is not
policies makes you anti-Semitic.
I agree. Criticizing Israel for their policy is not being anti-Semitic.
There's gay people in the Israeli army. There's gay people and women in the Israeli army and in Gaza.
But I do know
in Palestine.
But I do know a number of Jewish folks here in Toronto who are very threatened by the politics that's come from over there that's landed here.
Yeah.
So that's
a very real problem.
It is.
As you know, I have a lot of Jewish friends.
And we
my bestest friend is Jewish.
Yeah.
And I do acknowledge the rise in anti-Semitism, and two things can exist at the same time.
And they're concerned about it, and they feel threatened in some cases.
No,
and that's not a pleasant experience.
It's not. You don't say.
Yeah.
Granted that you just mentioned how angry people were at black people for interrupting Pride. Isn't it? Not an... Wow. You don't say. Unpleasant, you say. Huh.
Threatened.
I wonder how...
They're threatened.
Threatened?
Yeah, they do. Their
families
feel
threatened. I wonder how that feels. Let me think about that.
You're making light of that. I'm not making light of it.
I am not making light of it. I actually... Because I can...
This is very serious. I mean,
I can relate to it.
Well, fine.
Because I can relate to it.
You can relate to an Israeli family here in Toronto feeling threatened because of what's going on over in Gaza.
Exactly. Yeah. Because I can relate to it. I can also objectively identify where I can objectively identify where anti-Semitism is anti-Semitism and war crimes are war crimes.
Well, you know what? This one is really hard to
It's really
dissect.
hard. But you know what the Canadian people are saying? According to this poll, and I quote, they're definitely not happy about all the anti-Israeli encampments everywhere.
Yeah.
Canadians are all over the place on their opinions of the Israeli-Hamas conflict. I mean, who isn't?
Yeah.
But I go back.
It's so confusing, and so there's no solution there.
But the general beats are they don't like Hamas. Not hummus, but Hamas. They think Israel...
I like hummus with crackers, but anyway, that's another issue.
They think Israel has been too heavy-handed, which I do agree. I think Israel has been behaving like that bully on the playground, but I digress. Going back to the article. And they'd like the conflict to end somehow. But opinions are much more hardened when it comes to the Canadian-Israeli movement. A May Leisure poll asks a May Leisure poll asks Canadians opinions on the wave of anti-Israeli encampments setting up shop on Canadian university campuses. Of those who had heard the encampments, only 19% support them, and a plurality of 48% are against them.
Well, they'll be gone in a few weeks, so that's going to be an issue.
So
We'll go on.
I am definitely in the camp of anti-Israeli encampment. No pun intended.
Really? Oh, we agree on an issue. Wow.
How with
That's
you.
a good way to sign off tonight, don't you think? We actually agree on something.
So this
The
is
two generations have come together, folks.
this is
Get out of your tent and get home.
this
That's what you're saying. Absolutely.
What did I tell you months ago, even before this?
And while we're at it, get those people homeless out of the camps and the parks in downtown Toronto.
What did I tell you? If I go down to Algonquin or if I go down to Killarney,
Killarney. Where's that? Killarney? That's in Ireland?
Provincial Park,
Killarney, where's that?
I can tell you.
All right.
This is why I say Toronto is a bubble. I can tell you, do not camp. You need to
No,
embrace Canadian culture.
I did it 40
Mr.
years ago.
Canadian.
I did it 40 years ago in
40?
40, 50 years
You
ago.
need a refresh, baby.
Well, I don't know. As long as it's got a bed, I'm good. Which means hotel, not camp. But anyway, what's your point?
As long as it has bed and breakfast.
Yes, exactly.
I count with you. Listen, if I go to any of these places, I have to pay. I have to pay the federal government a small fee of $30 a night to camp.
Fair enough. There's
So
administrative cost
why
to
are
that.
people able to go to Edward Gardens Park
Ooh.
and not pay
My friend,
to camp?
you are on the right of center on this issue. Do you know that?
We should be
I-
charging the.
I totally agree with you.
We should be charging
That's
them to set up
another-
tents.
That's another issue. I wonder what the gays who are in there think.
They probably won't be. They probably won't fancy that opinion.
As you can see, folks, these shoot the sessions range into all kinds of discussions.
Norm,
And we actually ended up agreeing on something.
before we sign off today, I
Yes.
need you to say shit.
Okay, shit. There we go.
Thank
we
you.
really did shoot it today, didn't we? And we also shot two refills. Well, one refill.
Of Martinez.
Okay.
Listen,
say
no matter
goodnight.
where you end on the aisle, I want to thank everyone today for listening to today's episode. If you made it all the way to the end,
Yes.
follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or subscribe to our YouTube channel, Daddy and Son. If you have any questions for the show, send them over to daddyandsonpodcast@gmail.com. That is DADDYANDSON podcast@gmail.com. And until next time, sons, be good to your daddies.
And before I answer that, thank you guys for being with us, ladies and gentlemen. And daddies, please remember to be good to your sons.
Thank you.